right, good evening. As I said earlier, thanks so much for joining us for this very special college rugby webinar event for Rugby Minnesota. I'm really excited that your group decided to, make sure that all of the high school families in your area are aware of the opportunities that are available to you post high school to go on and continue to play and study in college. Most families that I end up talking to generally have a good idea, about what's out there, but a lot of them may not really know that there's a lot more opportunities than there were even a couple years ago. So I'm really excited to kind of get into some of that information for you now. And what I'm going to do, I am going to share a PowerPoint, but if at any point as we're going through the session, if you have questions, please, go ahead and put it in the chat or the Q&A box so that I can answer those for you. All right, so we're going to be talking about college rugby. I basically call all of these 101s, but really they should be 102s, 103s, because every time I do one of these sessions, I'm able to add and improve upon the things that I get to share out with all the families that are out there. Just a little bit of background about me. Of course, if you go to my website, ruggersedge.com, and you click about me, you are going to be able to, see a little bit more in-depth bio about me. But just a little bit, obviously, you can see there professionally, I've been a college consultant for many years, and then I was also, a player, then a referee, and then now an educator. So I kind of have done the full circle of kind of the rugby community there. I am based in Colorado, and there's my family. We're all a rugby family. My daughter started playing flag rugby this year, so that is really wonderful. Okay. So a little bit about the Rugger's Edge. We are a college advising firm. We're focused on rugby student athletes. And what we offer, we do, kind of our bread and butter is we offer personalized advising. We do some group seminars like what we're doing now. And then obviously some college program consulting as well. So we work with many of the college programs that are out there and help them with some advisement about their recruitment practices and ways to connect with players and families just like yours. So this is what we're going to talk about a little bit. We're going to kind of go over the rugby landscape. We'll talk a little bit about scholarships. We'll talk about those steps that I think are really important for families. And then obviously we'll have that question and answer. Up there, this is the current college landscape as of 2023. So if you've watched a previous webinar before, you'll probably notice the numbers continue to change. Last year when I did this session, some of the numbers just weren't firm because there are still a lot of teams that are kind of coming out of the pandemic, had registered but hadn't played, or played but hadn't registered. So this is a bit more of a firm number. Obviously things continue to change a little bit, mostly on the side of, which conference they're going to be in. Are they NCR? Are they CRAA, or et cetera, right? There's lots of different different groups that we have within the USA Rugby organization. The main thing that I want families to focus on is always that number that's in the red. So if you are looking for a men's team, there's over 400 programs that you could be a part of. And then on the women's side, over 350 programs. So I mean, that's a really fair amount of colleges that you could go on. If you want to continue to play rugby, you absolutely could. Now, obviously, between each of the different divisions and levels, there is quite a variety. So that will be part of your process of figuring out what is the best fit for you. But the main thing that I really emphasize to students is, if you love rugby and you want to keep playing, absolutely you can. I mean, there are so many opportunities for you to do that. So this is just at least an overview of how many options there are for you to play. Here are just some examples of those college teams that are within those divisions. As you can see, there's a lot that are out there, and ranging from, very, very small colleges. You got some community colleges in there too, like Norco, which is in the San Diego area. They're in a men's division too, even though they're a junior college. Army West Point is D1A. And so is St. Mary's College, which is also a small liberal arts college in California, and yet they will compete against each other. So this is one of those slides that I want to highlight, that I want students and families to really be aware of, is the idea of what division your student is looking at is really different from your standard kind of D1, D2 programs and that sort of thing. What you might see with basketball or football or things like that. Another bit of a difference between the rugby world and then maybe the traditional sports world is I just mentioned that majority of the programs, like 95% of the programs in the US are not NCAA. However, on the women's side, there is a small group that is NCAA. So they are under the acronym NIRA, which stands for National Intercollegiate Rugby Association. At this point, they need 40 programs to become a full NCAA sport, as opposed to right now, they are an emerging sport. So they're getting closer and closer every year, which is really exciting. Again, you can see the changes that go even from 6 months ago, the last time I updated these slides. You have a couple more, Warren Wilson College is adding into NCAA D3 in this year. So, I would just kind of keep an eye on it. The NIRA website's really good for keeping you up to date. The main thing that I point out, if you are a female player and you're interested in these programs, the recruitment process for you is very different than someone else who's going through the process looking at just club programs or sort of hybrid club programs or anyone on the men's side. You would have to follow NCAA rules and their recruitment processes and things like that. If you're not looking at a program that's on this list, you don't have to follow that, okay? So again, this is, you can find this on the NIRA website, the list of all the programs that are there, but it is definitely a growing group of programs in the US. Okay. As I just mentioned, there's definitely a variety of different types of teams that you can be a part of. You're going to hear, this one's varsity, this one's a varsity club, this one is club. And the common question I get is one better, or I want to play for the best. The vast majority of programs in the country are club. There is a growing number of teams that are varsity club, which is kind of that hybrid model, little bit of varsity, little bit of club, kind of somewhere in the middle. And then another small percentage that is varsity. And the main thing I want you to know in terms of, how do you decipher, is this team club, is this team varsity? The main thing is, where do they fall at that specific institution's, essentially what group are they underneath? So is there oversight from intercollegiate athletics? So are they, the main thing I look for is like, where are they on the athletics website? Do they show up on the same webpage as football, basketball, track and field, your traditional sports? If they do, they will be considered a varsity level sport or an intercollegiate sport. Now, this doesn't answer the question if it's better. I'm just trying to define what that is. You will find some other teams then that are kind of in this middle ground where you might see them listed on the sports page, but it's not going to be in line with those traditional sports. You'll see them maybe to the side. It might say like team sport, non-NCAA varsity club, or some version of that. Every single school it has a different word for it. So I apologize. You're never going to get the kind of straight ahead description of it. But that's generally how you would define those two. And then club would be kind of everything else. If you don't see them on that intercollegiate sports website, they're going to be typically under the club website, meaning their oversight is going to be along with other, club sports and rec leagues and things like that. You'll probably find them under like, student activities and clubs and things like that. The big difference there too is, typically if it's an intercollegiate sport, you're getting a lot more funding from the school for things like coaches, for trainers, for facilities, uniforms, travel, things like that would be more associated with varsity. You might get a little bit more, with them versus a varsity club. And then club generally is, all the finances for that club, similar to maybe your high school club, it's going to come from, fundraising, from dues, maybe some from alumni donations as well, but it tends to not be as fully supported as an intercollegiate program would be. So that's the main thing as you're going into and you're starting to think about what is it that I'm looking for. Similar to the, please don't focus just on the division. I also wouldn't just focus on whether a team is varsity or not, because that question, is one better? One does not mean the other. Just because it's varsity doesn't mean it's better than a club. There are some club programs out there that would absolutely annihilate a varsity program. They are that strong, they're that competitive, they've had a history of having a wonderful support, base of their alumni, from their coaches, or whatever the case may be. So really, it's part of your job as you're developing your list to get to know those teams as well as you can and make sure that it is a good fit for you and what you're looking for. That is a big piece of the puzzle is, what kind of experience are you looking for, and making sure that that team fits all of the criteria that you're looking for. Okay, along with that, the other piece of the puzzle in terms of assessing a rugby program is kind of considering how much time you want to spend with rugby, when you're in college. You might, a good way to compare is thinking about how much time are you putting into rugby now in high school? Are you doing about 6 to 10 hours? And is that hard? Do you wish it was more? 12 to 15, 20 to 25 hours. And I'm talking kind of a complete week of trainings, field practices, travel, meetings, anything else that you might be doing. Are you doing a rehab day, things like that, right? So some students might look at that 20 to 25 hours and say, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do that with this super, time-consuming major I'm going to have in college. And so that might be a really good indicator. A high performance program might not be a good fit, from an overall college experience standpoint. So really thinking through, what does the entire, day, week, year, 4 years look like for you, and seeing if, one of these rugby programs is a better fit for you. And I'm going to keep saying fit because that is so important to me, is making sure that you're finding a place that you can really thrive and is a good fit for the team, for yourself, that you get to graduate, you get to have a good time. All of those things are important in making this decision. Okay, so let's talk briefly about scholarships, because that's typically the biggest question I get is, oh my gosh, rugby, it's becoming a more popular, college sport. Like, are we going to start getting big scholarships? Now, there are scholarships that are available, but they are not what some families are maybe hoping, in terms of, it's not looking like a D1 football scholarship where you get, full tuition, board, and things like that. The scholarships that are available are kind of split between these 3 different categories. You will have some schools that are able to offer rugby scholarships, and that's money given, to the student or deducted from their total cost based on their, basically their rugby talent. That a program out there says, oh my gosh, Johnny is so great, we're going to give him $10,000 a year for his tuition and things like that. Because he's just so talented, we think he's going to add so much to our team. So that's what the rugby scholarship is going to be about. The second one there, merit scholarships, that tends to be where, if you are a family looking for ways to discount the total cost of college, this is where the bulk of the money comes from. So most students of mine that have gone anywhere and said, okay, I have, almost close to a full ride, it is from a merit scholarship, which is based on your academic performance and your leadership, not tied to your sport. So again, if you're really, really looking to discount that overall cost, really what you're doing in the classroom, that's going to matter more than what you're doing on the field. Third, alternate scholarships, that's going to come from a variety of different places. I kind of group this all together. You've got some schools that have some alumni scholarships in their pocket. They might have different ways of discounting from out-of-state tuitions to in-state tuitions, or discounting in that sort of sense. In a perfect world, if scholarship is a really big piece of the puzzle for you, you're really looking for a school where you could stack a couple of these scholarships together, where you might say, okay, this is the total cost of school, and we're going to get A, B, and C scholarship. You're not just counting on the rugby scholarship to take care of everything. So this is something you want to kind of keep in mind, is if scholarship is, the main priority, you might really want to start your list at, where are some schools that my child's going to get the most merit scholarships, and then maybe kind of backfill that with some rugby scholarships as well. Now, the second way that rugby can help you, on top of hopefully discounting the cost of college, which we know is very expensive, is admission support. So many programs out there are able to provide one of 2 things: either direct admission influence, meaning we like Johnny so much, we're going to go, we're able to, flag or tag, or slot in 10 players a year. As long as you've met the minimum requirements for admission, we're going to go ahead and do that. They walk, the files over to admissions, and admissions is able to admit them. Other schools can say, look, we are happy to provide input, which might be kind of a little bump if you're kind of on the border of getting into the school, which can be helpful, but there's just no guarantee. So if you're a student that's looking at a school that you're a little bit kind of right under maybe what a normal student would look like to get in, that program might be one that can make a recommendation to admissions to say, hey, like, please take a look at Johnny, or have a second read on him. We think he'd be a great addition to the program and the school. So it might just be enough to help get you admitted to a school that you may not get in kind of on your own, or if the pool is really, really big. So those are two ways that as you're talking to coaches, you might want to ask directly, are you able to provide any sort of admission influence, or can you have any input on my application? Even if they say no, it's helpful to know, and it's helpful to just ask so you kind of know what you're getting into. So here's just a little slide to show you a little bit about what a rugby scholarship looks like in reality. If you're about to go do this, this is a typical way it would look like. And you're going to see here on the left, you have what the student and the family was looking for in their budget, and then you have the university on the right. And you're going to see here, again, the bulk of this scholarship was from the merit. They're able to stack it with some rugby scholarship, and now their overall cost of attendance is $15,000, which is less than what they're budgeted for. So this is normally what it's going to look like. It doesn't mean most families are not going to pay anything, but it is bringing this, for the student who wants to go to University of Rugby, it went from a, kind of sticker price of 40,000 down to 15. So that would be kind of the most ideal, or the more typical way that I see my rugby athletes, getting through this process if scholarship is a priority for that family. All right, so let's talk about some steps. The first step, and I cannot kind of stress this enough, because I have so many families that come and have an initial call with me, and they actually don't know how to answer these questions. So I think it's important to have this conversation, whether it's you're about to work with someone like me, or you're about to, start doing some college visits. It's really important, if you're a student, to think about, why do you want to go to college? Are you going just because it's the natural next step, or what you think should be the next step? Is there a specific major you want to go to, or you want to study? Is there, I don't know, like, you kind of have to know a reason. If you don't, I will tell you the vast majority of students that end up transferring or don't make it through their first year, it's because they've actually never thought about why they're going. There has to be kind of a goal or a reason. And it really honestly can't just be, I want to keep playing rugby. So that's not going to be enough to motivate you and keep you going for 4 years, because it's hard. It's hard to be a student athlete in college. So having a reason is really important. Thinking through, what do you need in a college versus what do you want? So this is a question that some students, again, say, I really want to play college rugby, and I need it to be varsity. For me to be successful in college, I need that kind of structure. That's different than someone saying, well, I want to be in this area of the country, versus I need to do it because of, family or travel or something like that. So really thinking through, like, if you were to picture yourself in college, what does that look like? What do you need versus what you want? And being really clear. The 5 factors that I mentioned earlier, the main reasons I think if a student doesn't make it through this process, or they get to a college and it's not a good fit, they have not thought through these things. So they haven't thought about what kind of location they want to be in, the size of that school, the academic program, the atmosphere, or the price and budget. So if the price and budget is important, stick with it. Okay, I have a lot of families say, well, ideally the budget is 20,000, but we'll let Johnny apply to wherever and we'll figure it out. And I'll tell you that in the 10 plus years I've been doing it, there have been so many families where the student actually gets into that school they thought their kid wouldn't get into, and now they're sitting there going, how do we tell Johnny he can't go to that school because it's outside of our budget. So have that conversation and know like, okay, this is the budget. If you get in and it's above that, what is our plan? Are we, is the student going to take out a loan? Is the student going to work on campus? Like, what is the plan there? Thinking through like students that say, oh, I don't really care about the size. I could go anywhere. But being really honest with yourself of, okay, are you really okay going to a school that's less than 1,000 students? Are you okay going to a school that's 80,000 students or more, right? So really thinking through what would a class look like? What would the dorm life be? All those things are so important. And if you don't do it on the front end, which is now in high school, I promise you when you get there, it's not going to be as smooth or successful. The thing I often compare this to is if you were to, if you're a student or you're talking to your child and say, hey, look, if I were to give you X amount of money and say, you can buy a car, if that student said, okay, any car, I doubt they're going to say that, right? Most students and people are going to say, okay, well, what are my needs? Do I need a car that has 4-wheel drive? Do I need a car, that, I don't know, has good trunk space or whatever, right? There's certain specifics you need for a car because that's a big investment. College is a huge investment. So this is something you definitely need to put as much energy as you would into, buying a car, buying something on Amazon and looking at reviews. I mean, you need to be doing research on this before just kind of jumping in, okay? The last thing I want to just kind of think through is prioritizing. So from my standpoint, I have families that come in and will say, absolutely, scholarship is the main thing, right? We need to make sure that Johnny goes to a college, and we need to try to discount it as much as possible. But then they'll say, but it has to be on the West Coast. It has to have a top 20 business program, and it has to have, X, Y, or Z. So you have to figure out what is the number one priority. If it is scholarship, you might have to be okay letting go of some of the other things, right? And going back to what is the need versus what you want. You might want to be on the West Coast, but if you need scholarship, you might have to be open with going to the Midwest. Or if you are in Minnesota and you want to stay there, you might not have the program that you're looking for. The program you want might be in the Northeast. So you kind of have to play around with what is the priority there, and then figure that out as you're heading into building your college list, okay? Okay, second step, focusing on the academics. So as we already kind of covered, the academic piece is a super, super big part of recruitment, and it's a really big part of scholarship. So with the grades, the higher, the better. If you are, as a freshman right now, you should be building towards, your junior year. You want to have the strongest grades as you can, because college coaches, as well as obviously admissions, they're looking at your entire profile. So they're looking at it from grade 9 through grade 11 because you're applying fall of your senior year. If you go to a high school that offers a rigorous curriculum such as IB, AP, honors, things like that, you want to make sure that you have a pretty good balance of some rigorous curriculum. If you're looking at more selective colleges, obviously they're going to expect more as well. So I'm not saying go out there and sign up for every super hard class there is, but you want to think about what is it you're thinking about majoring in. Are you challenging yourself on those things you're good at? That's what we want to see. We want to see students that are pushing themselves a little bit more. Third thing here, tests, they are still important or potentially still important. So, the majority of colleges are test optional. However, I will point out some schools have gone back to being test required. So as you're going through this process, especially if you're early, if you have some colleges in mind, I would take a look at what their test policy is so you can decide, whether or not, if you're like, oh, I'm just not going to do a test, you might be surprised which schools are coming back as having tests that are required. In the last couple of years, seeing the test optional piece out there, the vast majority of colleges, my colleagues and other people we've seen is, if you have a good score and you submit it, chances are a bit better for your admission. So really what I'd recommend here is I would probably recommend taking the test, either SAT or ACT. If it's good, I would submit it. If it's not, then you can go test optional, but I wouldn't skip it entirely. I would just have it in your back pocket if you need it. And then obviously, stronger academic profile, the more merit scholarships you're going to receive, and then also support from coaches. So from the coach standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, the reason your academic profile needs to be strong, it is helpful for them. So it is much easier for them to go ahead and recruit, offer you money, offer you, help with admission, if you look like an easy recruit, if they don't have to fight for you as hard, if you look like someone that would already get into their college. Okay, so always really helpful for you to have a strong academic profile as you're heading into this process. The third step here is about your athletic profile. So first part here, good character, coachability. I'm sure all your coaches would tell you this. The college coaches, this is what they're looking for as well. So when they are at tournaments, when they're watching your film, I mean, they are looking for players that are going to be a positive addition to their team. Even if you're, everyone's maybe unfortunately played with someone who is very, very talented, but maybe not the friendliest person or not the most supportive, that can be a poison on a team. So a college program, if they're really trying to build something and build a legacy there, they might not want to take a chance on someone who is going to, kind of ruin their whole culture. So having that good character, having that coachability is really, really important in this process. Having proper communication with your coaches is really, really important. So relationship building, I made a note their junior year is most important. I am going to talk about the timeline in a minute, but I highlight the proper communication, meaning if you're meeting your coaches at a tournament, on a field, if you're emailing them, if you're having a Zoom call with them, be friendly, but understand they're not your friends. Okay, so just make sure that you're presenting yourself in a very professional manner. Dear coach so-and-so, hi, my name is Johnny Rugby. I'm really interested in your program, et cetera, et cetera. You're signing off with your full name, contact information. This is not something you're just going to dash off on your phone with a bunch of typos to the wrong coach. So please make sure the proper communication is there. Have a rugby resume that you have on hand that you can share and you can update, and you can make sure that coaches always know what's going on. You can download that example from Rugger's Edge. Game film. So it is becoming more and more important to have film. I think 5-6 years ago, it was kind of a surprise if a student had film, and now it is expected. So if you don't already have some, it is something I would definitely recommend you start planning for, whether that's asking a sibling, asking a parent, talking to your team, and then trying to put together a plan of how do we get game film. That's going to be important. Camps and tournaments, so summer's coming up. If you haven't already started thinking about where you're going to go, or if you're going to go to those recruitment camps, that would be really important. If there is a school that you're very interested in and they host a camp, it would be helpful for you to go. Obviously coaches would love to see you play in person. Seeing film is great. It kind of helps support and validate everything you're saying, but it is really nice when you get to be on campus, for them to get to know you, see how you fit in, and also for you as a student to see, do you like the location? Do you like the coaches? Do you like the dorms? I mean, all those things are important, again, for making sure that fit is there. I get the question a lot about in the summers, whether or not students need to play on an all-star team and travel versus maybe playing in their local area and just kind of playing in a summer league. 100% leave it up to you. My biggest thing is, if you have the ability to play, like I would play, you have kind of more chances to get film, learn, have competition. So, I mean, all-star play is great, but I understand like sometimes you can't do it, with travel and the cost and things like that. So as long as you're finding ways to play and improve your game, that's going to be most important. Of course, bigger tournaments, the nice thing about that obviously is many of those bigger ones, like in the summer, like North American Invitational is a big one. A lot of the college coaches do go to that. So again, they get to see you playing in live, which can be very helpful. And last, exactly like what we were talking about in terms of reflecting on what you want from a college standpoint, thinking through what you want from an athletic standpoint. So everything that we've already talked about of, how much time you want to train, how serious do you want this experience to be, that is going to be a part of your job as an athlete to really think through, what it is that you want. So here is a typical recruitment schedule, okay? And this is just a broad one, but for you to kind of think through what kind of tends to happen and what to expect. So in grades 9 and 10, if you're in grade, you're in one of those grades right now, the main thing is just exploration. There's initial contact is not needed, but you can if you want, right? So it's kind of up to you. Coaches aren't going to do anything with you if you reach out, but you might get on kind of a list so they can kind of keep you posted on certain things. But in grade 9 to 10, the big thing I want you to focus on, obviously the academics, but second, it's just kind of exploring, right? Researching different programs, thinking through, that's what that team looks like. They, are in small college, like watch some games. What does that look like versus, oh, there's a team that's right by my house and they're going to play in a D1 AA match. I'm actually going to go watch and I'm going to go see what that competition looks like. So grade 9 and 10 is lots of exploration. And grade 11, you can see there, this is kind of the bulk of where things happen. So I've even split it up into a couple different seasons. Fall, initial contacts should be complete. So that's when you're doing things like filling out recruit forms. You are sending emails. You're just kind of that initial getting in contact, introducing yourself, sending a resume, sending film, initial, right? Just kind of getting an appetite, I think it's a good place to kind of sell yourself initially to the college coaches. Heading into the spring semester, which we're in right now. So if you're in grade 11, right now is just continued contact, more film, answering emails. So the last thing you want is you did all this work in the fall to create that initial contact. Coaches are now emailing you and they're having to wait a month for you to respond. So this is also a little bit of a heads up for you. Recruitment should be happening on email, right? Your parents should be CC'd or blind copied so they're a part of it. But this should be something you get in the habit of checking every day, and making sure if a coach says, hey, great, make sure you send me your spring schedule or your summer schedule, you answer right away and say, of course, here it is, right? Summer, continued contact, you're now going to camps, tournaments, continuing to send film, making sure you're communicating to coaches. So let's say you're going to a camp. Prior to camp, I would send an email to coaches. I'm so excited to come to the camp. Here's just a bit of a reminder. Here's my resume. Oh, I got my final transcript. I got my SAT score. Boom, boom, boom. Here's everything. Look forward to seeing you. You get to camp, have a great experience. You come home, email that coach again. It was so wonderful to come to the camp. I learned so much. I'm going to start working on my applications this fall. Please let me know if there's anything else you need. Then we head into the fall of grade 12. At this point, this is where you're going to have some more, serious conversations with the coaches, where coaches are, may or may not say things like, we would love to have you be a part of this program. We plan to support you. What are your plans? Are you planning to come here? Are you going to apply early decision? This is the offer we want to give you. All of those things tend to happen in the fall. So know that no matter what, you still have to go through applications. So just because a coach says we want you to be here doesn't mean you don't still have to apply and do your essays and get letters of recommendation if you need through your school. All those things still have to happen in order for all of this to come together. So the fall is busy in terms of kind of the application and kind of firming everything up. But in a perfect world, you actually would have everything done in December, kind of the end of that first semester of senior year. And then second semester senior year is kind of wrapping things up, making sure your senior year finishes out great, but the recruitment piece is typically done by that first semester of grade 12, okay? So some resources that are available out there. I have a playbook that's available. The picture there is old, but it is available. If you go to my website and you click on the playbook, I love the FIS guide to colleges. Make sure if you're about to head into some testing, get some prep, get some test prep, whether that's free, that's available online, or through a local test prep company. And I would recommend talk to your neighbors, your friends, your teammates. This is not something to go into without any sort of prep. So get something. Getting some application or essay help, College Essay Guy, that's another website, great resource, lots of free kind of tips and tricks on there for you. If you need to work with someone like me, that's something that we focus on as well. So make sure you connect with us. We have a newsletter and we're on Facebook and those sorts of things, and also offer a free 30-minute consultation. You could always schedule that on my website if you ever want to do that and chat a little bit more about what your needs are and how I work with families and see if it's a good fit. One thing I was going to mention that I didn't include in the slide that students are always out there, parents are like, oh, how would you, how would you rank this program over this one, right? And I'm not like a sorcerer where I like know everything, right? Every year for me to have a good sense of whether or not I think this is a good program or this program, part of that is just me staying on top of watching film, right? And watching games. So like, for example, the CRCs are coming up. That's going to be something that I'm going to keep an eye on so that I get a sense of, oh, who are some teams that are kind of on the way up? Where are some teams that historically were really good? Maybe they're not really coming back, or something's been happening and changing from their administration side. Maybe this head coach left and now things are different. So these are all things, if you're a student athlete and you are looking at different programs, I would certainly recommend that you do. This is not, the great thing now is like so many teams now live stream their games. They have them up on YouTube. I mean, if there's a certain, let's say you have a list of 10 schools and you're wondering, well, I wonder what the rugby program is like. Just look it up, go on YouTube, and you can say, okay, look, if we're going to compare a high performance program like Life playing Lindenwood, watch that game, or at least watch the first half. Look at the speed of the game, look at your position, look at how, look at their rosters, like look at those sorts of things and get a sense of, okay, this is what these programs kind of look like. Look at their pack size and look at, do they have a lot of international players? I mean, those are all things for you to keep in mind. And then you can go ahead and also watch, okay, what are the D1 AA teams and what are the, D2 teams in small college? And you can start to compare, and kind of like what we said in the very beginning, you might find there's some small college programs that are exceptional, that are better than some of those D1 AA programs you just saw, right? So, I mean, a lot of this is homework that I'm giving, a lot of my students to say, look, like I can tell you what I think, but I want you to really be invested in this process and think through, where do I find myself? If I watch this game and I think, oh my gosh, there's no way I would start on that team, right? I'm not going to play. That doesn't seem like a good fit for me. I might then want to look at some other programs where I'm going to get a chance to play and I'm going to get a chance to lead. I want to, be right there from the very get-go, right? So think through again what it is that you're looking for and make an effort to make it happen. College is a really important next step. I find that it's much better for students to be a part of the process and not just have it kind of happen to them. So being really active in that process there. As always, if you have questions, you can always reach me at Karen@ruggersedge.com. And then along with the email, I'll also send a PDF of the presentation so you can take a look at that at your leisure. Strongly recommend, if you want to talk more about maybe a specific situation, sign up for that free 30-minute consultation with me. And hopefully we can chat further about that. And thanks so much. Have a good night.